Consciousness comes from matter. Who says this? The materialist says this. The ancient Indian materialist said that the body is made of the elements and somehow it produces consciousness. Now, our modern materialist says exactly the same thing in a much more sophisticated way. That here is the living body, and in that there is a nervous system and a brain, and somehow the nervous system and brain are producing consciousness. So that's the state-of-art explanation of consciousness in today's world. And you might say, why should we not stop right here? What the neuroscience is telling us, stop there. Why go on to all these ancient philosophies? The problem is that we don't have the slightest clue how this body and this living brain produces consciousness. You might say, no, just a minute. The neurons are functioning and the neuron activity of the neurons produces consciousness. Yes, but how? If you ask neuroscientists, the answer will be they've got something called promissory materialism. Promissory materialism is that it is matter which is producing consciousness, and it is true that we don't know how, but we will know. Give us 30-40 years. No, this is really the answer that I've got from some of the leading brains, leading minds. A philosopher who's also a biologist in NYU, he told me this, that I'm firmly convinced that its living tissue produces consciousness. Living brain and nervous system produces consciousness. How? It is also true, he said, that we don't know exactly how. But his example was this. Let me put it to you, a very interesting example given by some of the leading scientists today, materialist, reductionist scientists, who want to reduce consciousness to matter. The argument is this, interesting argument. 100 years ago, life was considered to be a mystery. And it was thought that nobody can explain what life is. It's a great mystery. And then there's this scientist and philosopher, he told me, today we understand life, the processes which we call blanket term life, that those processes are understood down to the molecular level. So we understand it now. 100 years ago we did not understand it. Now we understand almost a great deal about how life comes about. In terms of absolutely material, very sophisticated activities going on in living tissues, what is called life, we understand that now. Similarly, right now we don't understand how neurons firing in the brain can produce consciousness, but give us 30 or 40 years, we will understand. Promissory materialism. What would Vedanta say to that? Immediately the answer will be, what you say about life and what you're saying about consciousness, they are not on parallel. They are not, it's not a good example. It's what is called in philosophy a category mistake. Why is it a mistake? Notice, by the clue which Shankaracharya just gave us, anything that you can designate as this, you are not that. Now life, can you designate life as this life? Yes. So this life is explained, here is life, very good. This life is explained in terms of this matter. So this explains this, no problem. One higher level material process is explained by a lower level material process. And Advaita Vedanta understands this perfectly. In Advaita Vedanta, life is prana, and that's also material and objective. But consciousness, Chaitanya, pure consciousness, can never be designated by this. So when you say, I will explain consciousness in terms of brain, can you call it this brain? Yes. So brain is under the category of this object. And pure consciousness is in the category of subject. can never be objectified, you are claiming, philosophically speaking, it's a big jump you are making, that the pure subject which can never be objectified can somehow be explained by objective processes in neurons. Big claim. You have to walk the talk. Show me how it is done. And I am not alone. Luckily, at this time, if you Google hard problem of consciousness, this is exactly what is called the hard problem of consciousness. In fact, the term was coined by David Chalmers, who's the head of the Mind-Brain Consciousness Unit in NYU. And he's right there. He says, how can purely objective processes, just like what's going on in this building, in the electricity, similarly things are going on in the body, how can they explain first-person experiences, subjective experiences? None of these objective items have inner feelings and perceptions, and yet you do, I do. How? So he calls this the hard problem of consciousness. You just Google it, it's a very big thing, the hard problem of consciousness. Now, of course, it's very divisive because there are a lot of people who are against it. So it's a huge debate, at least it's a debate. It's not just something in the ancient India 5,000 years ago or 1400 years ago in Shankaracharya. It's a very current, cutting edge debate in consciousness studies today. We cannot explain consciousness in terms of matter.